Hello and welcome to the EduTalk Diabetes Series hosted by Easy, Biotone, and diabetes health and wellness experts. With the daily challenges of diabetes and interest in health and wellness strategies, the EduTalk Diabetes Series supports building your wellness community by connecting you with diabetes health professionals who share their knowledge and expertise on topics of concern to provide you the tools and resources to support and manage a healthy lifestyle. Today's expert is Dr. Daniel Castro, a board-certified internal medicine and geriatrics medicine physician, as well as a diplomate of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and is certified in diabetes education and is a lifestyle coach. He is the medical director at U.S. Diabetes Care in Tennessee and has a passion for working with diabetes patients motivated to reverse their diabetes. Let's listen and learn as Dr. Castro discusses type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance essentials for reversal. He'll discuss a common belief that carbs are bad for people living with diabetes, and yet every cell uses glucose as its preferred energy source. Dr. Castro shares the real reason for insulin resistance and how this leads to type 2 diabetes and other diseases. Most importantly, understand the actions you can take now to reverse insulin resistance. Thank you again for joining us tonight, and feel free to chat questions during the presentation, which Dr. Castro will answer at the end. With that, thank you for joining us. Dr. Castro, thank you for your presentation tonight. And I know you have a lot to cover, so I'm going to exit the screen and I'll come back to help you with chats at the end. It's all yours, and we're looking forward to hearing what you say.
Thank you, Danielle, and thank you to Easy and Biotone and the EduTalk Diabetes Series for giving us the opportunity here to talk on behalf of U.S. Diabetes Care. We're based in East Tennessee, but with a lot to offer. And so without spending a whole lot more talking about myself, let's talk about some of the exciting stuff that we have. And I need to hit the right button, and here we go. All right, so we'll be talking about as was said, what insulin resistance is, and some of the essentials that I see here as far as components here for the reversal of type 2 diabetes. So first of all, what is possible? And not everyone is going to be willing to make the necessary lifestyle changes because change is difficult for most people, but certainly everyone does have the right to know that lifestyle changes are not only safe, but they're also highly effective as a treatment option. So with that in mind, I tell folks in our classes here, I went through traditional medical school training. I graduated many moons ago, on to be specific, in 1986. So I was taught, once a diabetic, always a diabetic. And that is true if you keep doing what you've been doing. So the traditional story of the individual with diabetes in the past was, we will start them on one medicine, low dose. After a couple of years, we need to increase that dose. And after a few years, we maxed out on that dose and we had to add some additional medicines. And then we got to insulin and so on. But over the last several years, we've learned that this is not necessarily the case. And I'll just give you here some of our patients that we've had here in the clinic. The first sample patient was a 38-year-old gentleman who came in as a new patient um, at a time that we were doing primary care, and he had enough symptoms that it triggered me here to do a finger stick in the office, and his finger stick was in the 280 range. Got his initial hemoglobin A1C, and it was 10.6, clearly a diabetic. Um, but on our visit there, he declined medicines and said, "Doc, tell me what to do. I don't want to be on medicines." And his wife was actually very supportive of this. So, in a 1 hour visit, I just bombarded him with the basic nuts and bolts. On his 3 month follow-up visit, he had lost 7 pounds. His hemoglobin A1C was down to 6.4. Mind you, again, this is with no medicines, just dietary changes. And his next follow-up visit after that, he had gained a pound, and he acknowledged that he had been cheating some, especially on weekends. He was a construction worker and we'd be out of town during the week, where he was pretty faithful with the program. On weekends, being back with the family, things fell apart. But still had a hemoglobin A1C of 5.7. And this is over 2.5, 3 years ago now. His hemoglobin A1C continues to fluctuate in that range of 5.7 to 6.0 on no medicines, and not doing everything that he knows he could, but still doing quite well. Next sample patient, a gentleman in his late 60s, morbidly obese with his initial hemoglobin A1C of 7.2. He did our educational program for that we have here for 6 weeks, and his main focus was on fiber, which is one of the things that we talk about in our educational program. During those 6 weeks, he lost 26 pounds, and his hemoglobin A1C came down to 5.8. Um, uh, Another patient of ours, a 50-year-old lady who was diagnosed with diabetes a couple of years ago, and came to our clinic with a hemoglobin A1C of 9.2, was on 2 insulins, both a long-acting and a short-acting, and an SGLT2 medicine. And as she attended our education program, followed the steps, implemented her lifestyle changes. 6 months later, hemoglobin A1C of 5.5, had to be taken off medicines, and his hemoglobin A1C off medicines has been between 5.2 and 5.7. Now, we are talking about type 2 diabetes, but just so that you get a flavor, this program that we have and we talk about in our center also works for individuals who are type 1 diabetics who are insulin dependent. And not that they will reverse their insulin dependence, but that they will certainly feel better and do better. So this lady who had been on insulin for years with a constantly fluctuating um, in glucose levels, she said it just bounced up and down throughout the day. She completed a 6 week course, initially rather reluctantly coming to the first class because she said, "Yeah, there's no way I'm going to reverse my diabetes." But I encouraged her to come along. Afterwards, she was most grateful because she said her insulin requirements had dropped significantly, and most importantly, her wide fluctuations that she had been having narrowed down. So her sugar range was in a much tighter range, and certainly feeling better throughout the time. And this other patient of ours has been on insulin for over 40 years. She's done the course, completed it twice and done sporadic sessions here and there. And she was on a whopping amount of 300 units of insulin a day and is still not doing well. After implementing the program, her insulin requirements have dropped by over 50%, and a whole host of other medical conditions that she was suffering from have dramatically improved as well. So, as early as 2009, the American Diabetes Association was entertaining the idea of, how do we define cure of diabetes? And, they defined it back then as, partial remission, if you may, is the terminology that they were using, is if your fasting glucose was in the 100 to 125 range for at least a year, or your hemoglobin A1C was not diagnostic of diabetes, so less than 6.5, and you were and that was with no medicines, and you were in quotes complete remission if your hemoglobin A1C was in the normal range, meaning less than 5.6, and your fasting glucose less than 100 for at least 1 year in the absence of medicines. So currently, this is one of the logos that American Diabetes Association has. They state, join the fight to end diabetes, and this is directly off of their website. Together, we can end diabetes. So, at our center, we look at things from what we call a total lifestyle approach, with the big focus certainly on nutrition. We talk about exercise, the importance of water as the main liquid source, the importance of sunshine and vitamin D, temperance, meaning avoidance of all the bad things and moderation in every good thing as well, importance of fresh air. We talk about the importance of rest and sleep. And we do put importance here in the trust in God as well, the spiritual aspect of it also. So I'll touch upon some of these as we look at factors that will affect here the reversal of diabetes and see how we do here with time. So the biggest cornerstone here is going to be nutrition. And I will read this slide here from Dr. Hans Deal, who recently passed away, but was one of the leaders in the cardiovascular and diabetes and lifestyle arena. And he quotes here Dr. James Anderson, a professor of medicine and clinical nutrition at the University of Kentucky College of Medicine, a widely respected authority on diabetes, evaluated the effect of diet on blood sugar levels. Just as others had done before him, Dr. Anderson was able to turn lean, healthy young men into mild diabetics in less than 2 weeks. And that's important. They started healthy, lean, and in less than 2 weeks, he was able to turn them into mild diabetics by feeding them a rich 65% fat diet. A similar group, also lean, healthy young men, were fed a lean 10% fat diet and were given 1 pound of sugar a day. Notice that, 1 pound of sugar a day, and that did not produce even one diabetic after 11 weeks when they quit the experiment. So I ask patients when I tell them this research study, I said, so what caused the diabetes? Is it the sugar? Absolutely not. If you are on a low-fat diet, your body and your cells can handle 1 pound of sugar a day. Not that we recommend doing that, but again, the physiology is there such that it can handle that excessive amount of sugar and not develop into diabetes. Yet, if we give individuals a high-fat diet in a very short time, we will turn individuals into diabetics. And we'll explore that just a little bit more in the next slide. So what is insulin resistance? Insulin resistance is basically fat stored in cells that are not designed to store fat. Fat is designed to be stored in adipose cells that we all have, and throughout our, particularly in our skin and organs have, internal organs have some adipose cells there that are designed to store that fat. But cells that are not designed to store fat, when they have that, you develop insulin resistance. So specifically, muscle cells, pancreas, liver. And in individuals with lots of insulin resistance, we have seen, and they see this, huge fat deposits around the heart as well. So the heart, the pancreas, the liver, the muscle cells are not designed to store fat. And when that happens, you create insulin resistance. So in 2004, Yale University did this study, and they found that when fat stores in muscle cells exceeded 80% of what was normal, then the individual would develop symptoms of diabetes. Newcastle University in England, Dr. Roy Taylor is one of the world authorities here on insulin resistance and diabetes. He's done some research, and he calls this the dual engine hypothesis, where fat in muscles then leads here to fat in the liver first, and then fat in the pancreas. When that occurs, that is interfering with the glucose metabolism. It alters the transport of insulin. It alters how insulin is supposed to work. It basically blocks the muscle from absorbing glucose, and it also alters the production of insulin. And these altered metabolic pathways then create these inflammatory chemicals that basically then lead here to diabetes. Because glucose is wanting to get into the cell, but it is not able to because insulin is not working the way it's supposed to. It's pushing the glucose out of the muscle cells. The glucose levels in the blood remain high, and then the individual blames the potato, will blame the apple, will blame the orange, will blame all these carbohydrates as the problem with their high blood sugar, when in reality, the issue was not the potato or the apple or the veggie or so on. It was the fat that was ingested beforehand, and that clogs the system and the mechanism as to how insulin is supposed to work, and doesn't let glucose come from outside the cell, from the bloodstream into the muscle cells. The fascinating thing that Dr. Taylor has found is that these changes can be completely reversed, especially if we find diabetes in its early stages. And in his research, it's talking about 4 to 6 years. And if you're beyond that, you can certainly reverse it to a significant extent. And every individual is going to be different. So that's some of the nuances that we work on. And also, the pancreas can return to total normal functioning by eating less calories, especially those fat calories. So these are some slides from some of his work and his team in England. On graph B, you will see the insulin secretion rate that is done in non-diabetic controls. Over time, they can see what that happens based on laboratory experiments that they are doing. Then they took a group of diabetic individuals and did the same measurement, and you see that in graph C, where, let's see if I can do this. So graph C, where this curve is certainly much flatter than the normal non-diabetic individual. So insulin response is very diminished and blunted. They took these individuals and had them go through an 8-week intensive dietary program that if we have time, we can talk about some more at the end. And at the end of 8 weeks, these individuals that were here are now here. And if you notice, the insulin response or insulin secretion rate is almost exactly the same as the non-diabetic normal control individuals. So after 8 weeks, they are able to get that pancreas to be working like the normal non-diabetic individuals. And they were able to actually measure um, the fat content also in the pancreas, and in graph B, where the individual started off with a higher amount of fat content, and at the end of 8 weeks, they're down to the control amount, the non-diabetic individuals. And here's an MRI um, of the liver, where they are actually able to measure the amount of fat in the liver. And this is, if you are study geeks, you can look here, the Counterpoint study from Newcastle University. And the baseline scan, 36% liver fat. At the end of 8 weeks, these individuals who had type 2 diabetes have the liver looking normal with only 2% of liver fat in it. And these individuals have reversed their diabetes, and they actually, Dr. Taylor's group says, within a week of being on their intensive low-calorie diet program, their fasting blood glucose levels will be back to normal. And within 8 weeks, the pancreas is now working normally again, as you saw in the previous slide. Now, this is just to underline the point. This is data around 1925, and on the left, we have here the United States of America, what their dietary pattern was. And in this graph, about 35% of the calories coming from fat, another 50% of the calories or so coming from carbohydrates. And if you compare that diet to Japan on the right here, fat calories in the Japanese diet was minimal, maybe 5% of the calories coming from fat. Yet we know the Japanese diet being high in rice, lots of carbohydrates. We're looking about 85% of the calories here coming from carbohydrates. Yet if we look at these diamond circles, the incidence of diabetes, and diabetes being very high in the US, very low in Japan. So I tell our patients, so are carbs the problem? If carbs were the problem, this curve would be reversed, where the Japanese are consuming so many carbs but have very little diabetes. The issue has to do with fat. Fat in the diet is going to be the issue that drives type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance. So the question then, are all carbs bad for you? And I say there are good carbs and there are bad carbs. Very much like an engine. Is gasoline bad for a car? No. It depends what gasoline you put in the car, whether it's going to be good gasoline or bad gasoline. Our muscle cells are designed to run off of glucose. Glucose is a carbohydrate. So therefore, carbs by definition cannot all be bad. There are good carbs and there are bad carbs. Again, much like a car. If you give a car leaded gasoline, 85 octane, that's going to be a bad gasoline for just about any car nowadays. But if you give it unleaded, and it'd be even better if it was unethanol, gasoline, 89, 93 octane, you got good gasoline for that car and it's going to run well. In a similar fashion, our muscle cells like good carbs. And what are the good carbs? Those are the whole grains, whole veggies, whole fruits in their intact form or minimally processed, where you have all of the fiber in it. Compare that here to the refined carb, where you take that wheat grain, you strip the bran off of it, you cut the wheat germ off of it, and now you have this kernel of pure carb stripped off of the fiber that God gave it, and you make white flour out of it. That, because you stripped it off of the fiber, now becomes a refined carb, and that turns into a bad carb. And whatever products we make out of that white flour turns into the bad carbs. Similar fashion with sugar. You can eat all the sugar cane you want. You're just not going to find yourself eating too much of it because it's so fibrous. That cane is just like chewing on bamboo, just really tough. But when you strip all the fiber and all the vitamins and minerals that came with it from nature, you have this refined, pure sucrose that turns into now the bad carb that is bad for you. So just a quick slide that we tell folks here in our classes. We then look at fructose, and we spend a whole hour talking about this aspect of carbs. But just in giving you little pearls here. Honey is a better sweetener. Maple syrup is a better sweetener. Molasses is a better sweetener than your regular sugar. And we tell folks sugar substitutes, avoid all these artificial sweeteners. The only exception, which is not an artificial sweetener, is stevia. Stevia comes again from a plant, the stevia plant, much like sugar cane. It is sweet, and you can buy pure stevia, and it has some positive properties associated with it, though it is refined as well. So something to keep in mind, but it is certainly a reasonable sugar substitute. And we just emphasize over and over to our patients, please, please, please stay away from these top artificial sweeteners, the NutraSweet, sugary, Sweet and Low, and Splenda. Avoid them like the plague. Um, so just to drive home the point, Dr. Kempner had this rice fruit diet. He was at Duke University, and Duke University was doing this rice fruit diet for years in the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, and they were doing it, and they sold the rights to this rice fruit diet to a group of doctors in 2010, 2011 or so. And Dr. Kempner's rice fruit diet was composed of white rice, fruit juice, and believe it or not, added white sugar. Because if they didn't do that for some individuals, these patients were losing too much weight too fast. So this is a diet of pure carbohydrates, basically, very little protein, very little, essentially no fat. And individuals on this right fruit diet would have their blood pressure normalized. In an era when there were no antihypertensives, their diabetic retinopathy, their nephrotic syndrome, their heart failure, the diseases that were basically impossible to treat back then in the 1940s when we didn't have those medicines, were being cured with a diet high in carbohydrates, something that people would just be freaking about nowadays. So a brief word on protein and diabetes. Um, and This study was done in 2000. They did some SPECT scans measuring the coronary blood flow, and they compared individuals who were on a whole food plant-based diet versus the high protein, low carb diet. Give it whatever name you want, but low carb diets are popular out there with, again, different names. And what they found is that individuals who were on the whole food plant-based diet had a 40% increase in their coronary blood flow while on the diet, compared to those who were put on the low carb, high protein diet, where they had a 40% decrease in blood flow through their coronary arteries. Certainly not something that you would want, particularly if you're a diabetic already who is already at risk for coronary artery disease. And this article from 2010 published in Diabetes Care, 38,000 individuals. They found that for every 5% calories consumed from animal protein, there was a corresponding 30% increase in risk for diabetes. The Adventist Health Study, and the epidemiologists love studying Adventists here for multiple diseases. And in this particular study, they compared the different dietary patterns that one can see here. The vegan, where there's no animal products; lacto-ovo vegetarian, where they're consuming milk and eggs; pesco-vegetarian, which now adds fish; semi-vegetarian, in their definition, was eating meat once a week; and meat eaters, where they're consuming meat more than once a week. And the more animal products get added, the greater the prevalence of diabetes over time. And what about red meat in particular? In this particular study, just changing a half a serving per day over 4 years is going to make a difference. If you increase your red meat consumption by half a serving per day over 4 years, you're going to have a 48% increased risk of diabetes. If you decrease your red meat consumption by half a serving a day, you're going to have a decrease risk of diabetes of 14% over 4 years. So you don't even have to get rid of all the meat, just changing it. And the importance of dietary substitutions also being important here. Let me just highlight this bottom slide. Substitutions of 1 serving of nuts, low-fat dairy, whole grains per day for 1 serving of red meat per day was associated with a 16 to 35% lower risk of type 2 diabetes, meaning getting rid of red meat, 1 serving of red meat, and inserting in its place a serving of either nuts, low-fat dairy, or whole grains is going to be healthy and better for you. Just a brief word on exercise. We talk in our sessions here about burst training and what that means and how that impacts insulin resistance. Just fascinating physiology. I just don't have time to cover that now. And we talk about the importance of going for a walk after the meal. The post-meal exercise, where you're doing mild to moderate exercise for 5 to 20 minutes after every meal, is going to bring that blood sugar level out of move the glucose from the bloodstream into the muscle cells through mechanisms that are not dependent on insulin. There are other gates and doors, if you may, that open up with exercise. So when you are moving, that helps move that glucose from the bloodstream into the cells where it belongs and have it utilized. I'll just mention a brief word here on sleep. Sleep is certainly important, but fascinating research. It's not just the amount of sleep, but the timing of the sleep. So we know that melatonin is a powerful antioxidant, and has multiple other functions in the body. And what we know is that it is pumped out in a circadian rhythm fashion, meaning it is going to be dependent on light, and it is wanting to be secreted after 6 p.m., 9 p.m., especially the engine and the pineal gland in the brain is revving up, saying, all right, ready for darkness. And once the lights are out, it starts pumping that melatonin out into the bloodstream. And melatonin in the bloodstream starts doing all these healing properties and restoring things and fixing things and helping our body get retuned. And by 2 a.m., it starts shutting down and levels start decreasing rapidly till about 6 a.m., where it's back to flatline. So if you are awake, and I still am a night owl, I will confess, but much less than I was in the past, partly here due to my wife, and especially here due to this research that I've been reading on. If it's 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, midnight, and you're still with the lights on, watching TV, doing computer work, doing screen work, the body is not able to release melatonin. So when you turn off the light at midnight, here you have midnight. Now the pineal gland says, all right, we can now start be producing melatonin. And so it starts revving up production of melatonin, but it gets at 2, 3 a.m. and its body saying, hey, we're on the way down. So it starts coming down. So the amount of melatonin production that you are going to get if you are going to bed late is going to be far less than the total amount of melatonin that the body would have liked to have produced. This translates into less health, basically, less restoration happening in the body. And they've done some fascinating interventional studies. In a single night of partial sleep deprivation induces insulin resistance in people with type 1 diabetes. And for every 30 minutes of weekday sleep debt, obesity risk at 12 months increases by 18%. Insulin resistant risk at 12 months increases by 41%. And they looked here at adolescents with type 1 diabetes. And all they did was tell them, we want you to sleep for an extra 15 minutes or up to an hour extra per night. Hemoglobin A1C improved to 7.4% improvement in their glucose levels. By adding 1 hour sleep for 6 weeks in other individuals, reduces fasting insulin, improves insulin sensitivity. So we know that sleep plays a role in the management of diabetes as well. And I'll just mention one quick word here. We're out of time now, but there's a lot of talk here on intermittent fasting. There's all ways of doing intermittent fasting. And one program that we are associated with, shall I say, or that we mention to our patients is the work done by Walter Longo and his group at University of Southern California. And they call this the fasting mimicking diet. And in the fasting mimicking diet, they've published work in humans and its importance and help at bringing hemoglobin A1C down, at cutting down medicines, at cutting down weight on individuals. But this study was done in 2017 on rats, where they actually destroyed the beta cells being those cells that produce the insulin. And they have these now type 1 diabetics, essentially, that are not able to produce insulin, go through several cycles of this fasting mimicking diet. And what they see is a restoration, redevelopment of beta cells these little round circles, and where they see the pancreas restore itself, regenerate itself. And there's data to suggest that when you go through episodes of fasting, particularly after several days of fasting, there's stem cells that are being released into the bloodstream, which now do some of the fixing and repair of damaged organs. Another fascinating area of development that is going on with lots of potential. So the concept of fasting mimicking diet is that they, through a controlled program that they've developed, they are feeding the body, but the body thinks it is fasting, and still you get the benefits of fasting through a 5-day program. Well, you can do plain water fasts for 3 days and get some of these benefits also. It's just much more challenging and difficult for patients to adhere to that. But anyway, so those are just some of the things that we talk about in our program, and I just wanted to whet your appetite as to potentials that can be done here. Let you know that insulin resistance is not a carb issue; it is a fat issue, an excess of fat intake, and that carbs are actually not the enemy. The fat is our enemy. And if we can work on that concept, we will be able to see dramatic improvement in our individuals with type 2 diabetes. And with that, I'll take a pause, stop sharing my screen. If I can,
And I'm back. Whoops.
there we go.
All right. Well, I saw some chats come in. Excuse me. And everyone, please know that there is still time to submit chats. The talk was fascinating. It was really fascinating and a different approach to be talking about fats and the impact on diabetes or on your body managing
Yeah.
its insulin and glucose levels. Let's see, Janice asked earlier, how many calories is a low-calorie diet per day?
So in the study that Dr. Taylor did, they were actually doing an 800 calorie diet. And you can go to their website and see it's not a proprietary program. They um, give some sample ideas as to how to do it. It was tightly supervised initially while they were doing their work. They've been able to see that this can be expanded, and in England, they have general practice offices and practitioners implementing this. So it's a program that can be done widespread. You don't have to be in the hospital or have any particular special training per se to do it. So it is doable. The challenge is, again, how many people are going to be willing and motivated to do that program for 8 weeks? And in his program, they had them again for 8 weeks, and then they can go back to a regular diet provided they don't regain the weight. And what they found by doing that low calorie for 8 weeks, they're stripping the, the fat out of the liver, the pancreas. Now the liver is able to work again the way it's supposed to do so. The pancreas is able to work again. The muscles are working the way they're supposed to. And if you lose a core amount of that weight and keep it off, you can stay off medicines and keep that diabetes totally reversed. If you regain that weight, obviously the process goes back. And it's just what I tell folks. It's think of obesity. Are you an obese individual forever and ever? Well, if you keep the weight on, yes, you will. If you lose the weight, you're no longer obese. You can maintain your normal weight provided you do the lifestyle dietary changes and keep the weight within control. And you can say you were obese in the past, currently you are no longer obese.
And I believe that as you gain the benefits and recognize the benefits and know you're feeling better, you're sleeping better, you're exercising at that point, you'll be incentivized to continue
Oh,
that diet and lifestyle change.
oh, absolutely. And again, they've tracked these individuals for several years afterwards, and provided they are doing what they wanted to do and keep that weight off. 5 years later, they're still off medicines and with normal glucose levels.
Can you mention again if someone wanted to go and Google and look online? Um, was it Dr. Taylor?
Yeah, so Roy Taylor out of Newcastle University
Okay.
has tons of stuff um, that we don't have on our website. We probably should link up here with and tag some of their material, but they're probably the world leaders in some of this work.
All right. Thank you for repeating that. Um, what about healthy fat from avocado and extra virgin olive oil?
Yeah, so great question. So what we talk about in our program is there are good fats and there are bad fats. Okay, just like good carbs and bad carbs. So we want to cut down the fats. We want to eliminate the bad fats, the saturated fats, and substitute those with the good fats. Yes, extra virgin olive oil, avocados, a great source of healthy fat. Actually, avocados have lots of fiber in it too, lots of good nutrients. You want your a small portion of nuts and seeds also being the healthy fats, but you don't want to overdo it either. Again, fats are fats. So if you overdo the good fats, you're going to clog your liver and your pancreas and your muscle cells as well. So stay away from the bad fats, the saturated fats, substitute them with the good fats, such as nut seeds, extra virgin olive oil, and avocados, certainly.
Um, Janice is saying this has been a fantastic, fascinating talk. Thank you so much. I have family with severe diabetes. Is there one fat you can suggest that is most toxic?
One fat that is most toxic? Well, fortunately, the FDA finally took it off of the market after years and years of lobbying and asking for that to happen. Those are the trans fats. So in 2021, they finally, after multiple extensions, okay, finally got the trans fats out of the main source of foods that you purchase. Though they are still, you can find trace amounts of it, and just the way the wording on legislation is, you can still have trace amounts of it and still call it zero trans fats. Um, but probably the easiest one to target as far as one to avoid are those deep fried French fries that you get in fast food restaurants. That deep frying that happens in the oils, you're creating the trans fats. Um, and I won't name the food chains, but you know which ones those are. Okay. So that's probably the worst kind. And then from there are the saturated fats, which you're going to find here, particularly here in the processed meats. So the pepperoni, the salami, the hot dogs. And next in line there are the red meats, the beef and pork fats.
All right. Well, I'd like to mention last year we had a presenter do an edu talk on good fats, bad fats. And for those attending, you can find those in the EduTalk Diabetes Archive Library on ease-z.com or on biotone.com under the EduTalk library. And it's Linda Lockett Brown that presented the good fats, bad facts. I believe it's Rainbow is asking, what is the percentage of good fats? I don't quite understand that in Rainbow, if you would like to elaborate.
Well, maybe I can give a stab at it, saying, so how much fat should we have in our diet? Again, it is pretty much impossible to have a no-fat diet, because even in that the Duke University, rice fruit diet, there was a little bit of fat and enough protein from the rice that actually Dr. Kempner would have individuals on that diet for up to 1 year. And that was their sole calorie intake. Sounds crazy. Okay. This is the 1940s era, 1950 type stuff. Um, and these individuals, again, were monitored, supervised, and did fine. But as far as what are in our population here nowadays, so what would be reasonable? I like to tell folks we certainly want to keep it less than 20% of our total calories coming from fats. If you want to really get reversal, you want to be aiming for the 10 to 15% of your calories coming from fats and not more, which then translates into the majority of what you're going to be eating are going to be the good carbs. Uh,
Right.
what the muscle cells are designed to be using, what our body's designed to be using for energy is glucose. And if you get that from the good carbs, you're not going to have the issues of diabetes.
Thank
I
you for
mean,
that.
there are societies actually even nowadays where their food staple is cassava or potatoes. I mean, just pure starch, 50, 60% of their diet is coming from that. High amounts of carbs with very little diabetes, and for that matter, very little cancer as well. So again, carbs are not the issue. It's when we refine the carbs that we turn the carbs into a bad carb.
Yes, and unfortunately, that's true. So it seems like a vegan diet might be the best way to reach some of these goals.
If individuals are open to that, absolutely. That is, and interestingly, the American Diabetes Association now is looking and mentioning that as one of the options there too, as a whole food plant-based. I mean, that is what I prefer to use because a vegan diet, you can have, potato chips and Pepsi and still be vegan. You want it to be whole foods, plant-based, and Mediterranean diet is another very healthy option with very good results and lots of data behind that. DASH diet, very similar concept. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I haven't seen any other chats come in. And what I'd like to mention to folks is please watch your inbox tomorrow for a follow-up email. It will include a recording link to tonight's talk with Dr. Castro. It will include a copy of his PowerPoint presentation, and it will include his contact information and website and email address. So keep an eye on that. If it's not there by midday, please check your junk or your spam folder. And one last question. When you mentioned fat around the liver, does that mean fatty liver? And does that mean you can reverse a fatty liver as well through
Great
diet?
question. Yes. So, um, fat inside the liver is fatty liver, and yes, we can reverse fatty liver. Um, so we know again that there's been an epidemic of fatty liver development in large part here because of the increase in soda consumption and sugar consumption in the United States, which is a whole physiology stuff that we mention in our educational series there too. But yes, that is also reversible.
Well,
Again, provided we catch it before you've made the damage here of cirrhosis, which we know that fatty liver can lead here to cirrhosis.
and is it always associated with diabetes, or is it a precursor to diabetes, or do they
They go
go
together.
hand in hand?
Yes, they go hand in hand. Yes, very much so.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been fascinating. Um,
Well,
totally
it's been
appreciate
a
you sharing
pleasure.
your knowledge with us. And do you have anything in closing that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, again, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. This is certainly when I tell patients our direction, almost without fault, they say this is absolutely different than what I've heard and been taught elsewhere. Yet this is where the science is at, and my hope and desire is that within 10 years, this will be mainstream. If you want to be on the cutting edge, check our website there at usdiabetescare.com. We have an educational app. The classes that we do in person are available online as well. Um, and again, I want to thank Easy and Biotone for the opportunity to be presenting here with you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Castro. And everyone, please join us again in August, August 12th. We will have Jennifer Pressimone, past presenter, returning, and she will present on dementia and type 3 diabetes, holistic sense for brain and emotional wellness. And Jennifer is an aromatherapist, and you can find her previous Edu Talks in the archive libraries on biotone.com under the Edu Talk tab, or on ease-z.com under the Edu Talk tab. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And here's to better health. Thank you for sharing so much today, Dr. Castro.
You're very
And
welcome. Have a good night.
okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.